Hi everybody, this is Nick Geese from Chestermere and Calgary Speed School. I'm the co-founder and director of Athlete Performance, and we are excited to share with you this performance seminar on return to running progressions for athletes. This was an in-service presentation that we gave to a group of physiotherapists and chiropractors at Peak Kids, Health and Performance in Calgary, Alberta. The goal of the seminar was to give a strength and conditioning coach perspective on return to run progressions for a wide range of lower body injuries. This presentation goes over our 5-phase return to play rehab model, as well as going over the key areas we look at for progressing athletes back to running in a safe manner. This was an awesome time, showcasing some practical tools that we use in the trenches with athletes who are rehabbing a lower body injury and need to get back to running for their sport. We hope that you enjoyed this presentation and can take something away to use in your own practice. Enjoy! So I'm Nick. I'm co-founder of Chestermere Speed School and Calgary Speed School with Matt. We started a month before the lockdown, so it's been an interesting 2-ish years trying to start a new business. Myself, I've been in the industry for 9 years, strength and conditioning coach, just finished my master's degree and trying to build a business now. So, all right. Does everyone have the notes? Anyone not read it beforehand? You didn't have to, but no, perfect. So yeah, me and Dave chatted a little bit back and forth about what could be the most beneficial kind of presentation for you guys, and there's a lot we can do, and hopefully there's more we can do, but we thought that our return to run progressions and how we approach running rehab would probably be the most helpful for you guys. So in terms of building a referral network, you guys know and can kind of trust what our process is, but also hopefully we can give you guys a few tools that you can use in the clinic as well. So we'll go through all the boring kind of reading at the beginning, but I wanted to start with some of the issues that we see from our perspective in the rehab sphere, just from our experiences with other physios and other coaches and that kind of thing. Is the biggest one is we haven't seen a really coherent rehab process between you guys in the clinic with us in the gym. And we've often seen that we can clash with different physios. Physios have their own ideas of how smart a coach is or how good they are. So there's often a lot of disagreements and egos, and really that only serves to hurt the athlete or the client that's rehabbing. And again, something else that we have seen is athletes often are good at, so when they hurt themselves and they can't run, they go get physio right away. But often we see a lot of passive modalities, or they're loaded not quite a lot. And that's kind of how me and Jenna, or Matt and Jenna, I think, initially got introduced, as she saw a program Matt wrote for an athlete, and she was like, oh, this is awesome. So he's actually getting loaded, and that's where that relationship kind of started. So and we've seen kind of 2 big consequences with that is athletes are getting underprepared to return back to sport after completing the rehab. So whether it's a 6-week rehab or 12-week rehab, okay, go back to sport and try to run again. And if they haven't gone through a really thoroughly progressed return to run program, that's usually things don't turn out well. And then consequence 2 off of that is re-injury rates are quite high, and that's where we see a lot of chronic injuries pop up. As well as most rehab cases that we've seen with athletes that we get referred is usually it's focused on isolated capacity development. So single leg calf raises, glute bridges, easy stuff that you aren't really loading quite a lot. So things that we really want to focus on are, or some questions that we generally have when we get a new athlete or we talk to a new physio is, what about the detraining period? So are we addressing not just the injury, whether it's an ankle or ACL, but cardiovascular fitness? Are we working on co-contraction of all the muscles around the leg and the hip? What's their overall strength? What's their strength symmetries? And again, atrophy and hypertrophy, are we addressing those? The acute to chronic workload spikes. So again, if an athlete's been on the physio bed for 6 weeks and then they go out and try to run 3 times a week, that's a huge spike in load, and there's a lot of good research backing that up, that can lead to a lot of injuries. Beyond just getting the injured area, the tissue quality and the loading in that area, are we working on running and jumping mechanics? So that's the practical part of this presentation is we'll go through a lot of the running and jumping mechanics we'll do with a new athlete. How are the tissue qualities under fatigue and high loads? Again, in a controlled physio setting, if you can do 15 calf raises, that doesn't necessarily tell you what the calf's going to do when you're sprinting at 30 meters, 80 minutes into a game or anything like that. And then a big piece that we really focus on is the confidence of the athlete. Are they mentally ready to actually start running again? Do they have anxiety? Do they have fear around that injury? So through good progressive return to run programming, we can improve that mental side of the athlete as well. So again, what we think, or what we've noticed with a lot of physios in the past that we've worked with, is they tend not to know what to do with an athlete after the first few weeks that the rehab starts. And often we hear it's usually the parent or the athlete telling us that the physio cleared them and they're allowed to go back to sport, but without them getting back to a normal gym routine, and that's kind of a red flag for us. And on the flip side, and what we're trying to improve on our end, is a lot of S&C coaches have no idea what to do with an athlete once they get hurt. Usually they're just shipping off to a physio, or if they have a big ego, they want to try to take care of everything themselves, so they have no idea where to start. So hopefully this is kind of the start of improving both worlds for the athlete and client. So if we go to section 1, and again, this is what me and Dave and us and Jenna kind of talked about to show them what our rehab system's going to look like. But overall, and I didn't create this, I've kind of built this off of a few different rehab protocols that I quite liked, and I've seen them work as a 5-phase model. Probably you guys have probably seen something similar to this, but we go from 1 to 5, return to function, return to load, strength consolidation, dynamic integration, and return to sports performance. Those are just the names we've given them. And really what we'll focus on for this presentation is, or the practical side, are phases 2 and 3. So that's what I really want to show you guys, because this is stuff that you guys can do in the clinic with your athletes. But really where, and I kind of have in the brackets there, whether it's a physio or the S&C coach who's really leading that. So in the beginning stages, obviously it's going to be much more physio-led, with us kind of working on the non-injured areas. So if it's a lower body injury, are we going to do upper body work? Are we programming some cardiovascular training that they can do? Can we work on hip strength if it's an ankle injury or something? So then we can kind of take over that side while you guys really lead the actual injury. As we kind of progress over time, it's more of a team effort. And then again, as the athlete gets healthier and healthier, it's going to be more and more S&C led, with the physio just providing some support and signing off. Obviously in the real world, in the private setting, doesn't work exactly like that, but this is how we're trying to set up our rehab model to allow physios and clinicians to work with us and do the best with athletes as well. So, but I can let you guys read through that in a bit more depth, what that actually looks like. If we go to section 2, again, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting, because again, when we work with athletes or when we talk to physios, a lot of this stuff hasn't been addressed, and they're really hyper-focused on the exact injury. So there's 3 big areas that we look at in terms of getting an athlete back to running. So obviously the biggest one initially is reduce the injury-specific deficits and improve gait mechanics and the physical qualities. So range of motion, especially after trauma or some sort of surgery, that's a really big focus initially. Working on general and specific strength in key areas. So are we improving asymmetries? Are we improving overall strength, whether it's upper body or lower body? And are we improving specific isolated capacities that we check off to make sure that we're actually cleared to start running again? Because if there's some big deficits or asymmetry side to side and someone wants to go running, we know, well, you probably shouldn't quite yet. We want to still improve those things. Then we find that A and B, if they are done, those are kind of where it stops in the rehab world with the athletes that we've worked with. Where, again, we expand on it is gait mechanics. So we're improving, again, I always go back to ACL surgery as my example, but are we improving knee flexion, hip flexion, knee extension, so terminal knee extension, or improving how the athlete heel strikes and rolls through the foot, because again, after an injury, that stuff goes down, so we still need to address that in our rehab. Are we improving overall sprint mechanics? So this is where we can really be helpful for the physios and chiros in their rehab process, especially in the beginning, is addressing projection. So for acceleration or max velocity, is the athlete able to move their hips horizontally or vertically? So we can do this with both running drills and in the gym by improving force output. Are we improving switching or thigh angular velocity? So this has to do a lot with, so Matt, if you want to just stand up into A position, A frame. So when I talk about switching or thigh space, what we'll look for in the drills is creating, excuse me, more space between this thigh and this thigh. Usually after an injury, if you just bring the leg down a little bit and squat on this one. This is usually what we'll see in drills or running, is a much smaller space. So again, it doesn't matter if the quad strength or the ankle strength has improved. Are we improving the coordination of the hip and everything down the chain, that when they actually go back to their sport, they're not exposed to another injury or something like that. Usually the only way to improve this well is with drills. So again, knowing drills, knowing when to select drills and program them is really important. And then another key area is reactivity or just stiffness of the whole leg or the shank. So this has a lot to do with pre-activation on ground contact. So again, drills, you can work on this in the gym with isometrics, but a lot of low amplitude plyometrics is how you want to actually improve this aspect in the rehab process. As well as we want to address change of direction mechanics. This is a little bit beyond this presentation, but maybe that can be another presentation, how we kind of build that from the ground up. So again, if a physio knows all this stuff and is addressing this, another layer that we kind of see not being done in the rehab world to the level that we would want it done is the other two. So increased sporting demands exposure. So a big one is increasing that running volume over time. So if someone can just go out and run around the block and isn't in pain, that doesn't mean that's the same thing as the fatigue and the loads and the changes of direction in a game, say rugby or soccer or something like that. Because as we know, the fatigue will change mechanics. As you fatigue, you'll decrease force production, and that can lead to pain or re-injury. So we establish a lot of those running volumes through tempos. And if you don't know what tempos are, it's generally 30 meters to 100 meters at around 70-75% speed, and you just build those reps up to 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers total in a session. As well as exposure to high-speed running and max sprinting. So this is especially important after, say, a hamstring injury or something like that, where the eccentric loads are really what's going to cause that chronic hamstring injury over time. If you're not exposing the athlete to those high speeds, there's nothing we can do in the gym or the physio clinic to mimic that kind of speed and load on the hamstrings. The only way to do that is through graded exposures of sprinting. So like I say in that 0.2, 5 times your body weight is coming down on your foot during sprinting. You need to sprint to actually get better at that. Nothing in the gym we can do. And then mental readiness. If the athlete has some fear or anxiety around their leg and the confidence in that leg, the only way to get better at that is do more and more and more each week so that they actually know they can do it. So next we'll be kind of going through the practical side. Anyone have any questions or anything on that they want me to expand on, or anything I didn't explain clearly? So maybe we'll get everyone over this way, and I'm going to make Matt sweat a little bit. Can't hide in the corner. So we get an athlete that's quite injured, so after a surgery or a really bad sprain and they can't really walk or weight bear, we'll put them into the phase 1, the return to function. And really most of the drills that we'll be doing are either stationary. Oh, sorry.
When we do this, can we just call it a case study and let's define what type of athlete, what age, what injury as we go through this? Can we just, will that work?
It might. If it doesn't, I guess we'll just go from there. Matt, what sport do you want to be? Actually, so let's do rugby, ACL,
Okay. ACL. Offer.
12. That's about your humor, hey? Yeah. So 12, no, we'll say 16 rugby, ACL, and we'll work through. Yeah. So our big goals, so if it's an ACL surgery especially, there will be a lot of stationary drills, a lot of walking drills. And again, this will be more physio-led, and the criteria that you guys would tell us would dictate what kind of drilling we would do. Besides the running drills, we would be doing quite an extensive upper body program, upper body cardiovascular work, core training, hip training. If it's his left leg, we'd be doing some right side leg training for the crosstalk and keep his brain sane and stuff like that. But we're really focused on the tissue healing, obviously decreasing pain and effusion, restore the range of motion. Again, question, Dave?
Sorry, yeah, I'm gonna be.
No, it's all right. Yeah, you said you weren't talking.
I want to make this real world.
Yeah.
Right? So he comes back here. When do you want us to then send him into like when do you want to collaborate?
Oh, that's a good question. In an ideal world, it'd be before the surgery, so we could be doing.
So there's already a relationship going on, just prehab.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of the program that we've based a lot of our return to run and just return to sport progressions. They start working with their ACL athletes like 3 days post-op. That'd be awesome. I don't know that that'd be realistic in the private sector here, but the sooner the better within a few days, because we can start doing, hopefully some of these drills you guys can start to see are quite low intensity, and just because they're with an S&C coach doesn't mean we're trying to load them straight away or anything like that. But I think a lot of these drills, especially a lot of the stationary isometric ones, we could do literally whenever you can convince them to come in and see a coach. So, and especially like if they come see us and we can do only 10 minutes worth of stuff, upper body, off feet conditioning. So yeah, like especially the athletes that are bought in, like they get hurt and they're back in the next day even. So a lot of what we're focused on at this stage with Matt, if he, again, if this is a few days later, is stimulate the CNS. Obviously, we don't want to put too much load or tension through, so wherever the graft was through those tissues and even the knee, we need to let it calm down, obviously. But we want to use the CNS a little bit to try to remember some of those key running positions that we had and preserve any muscle mass that we can. Obviously, there's going to be some atrophy. We'll try to preserve as much as we can. So before we would even get into that, Matt, maybe you can come out here. And if anyone wants to try some of this stuff, you can. When we start doing some of the more intense drills, I'm going to make Jenna do some for sure. But and even if he has, you guys don't have any crutches, do you? Do you have crutches here? Okay. So we could even do some of these with crutches, but just a standing A-frame for an isometric. So this could be done on the surgered side. If the athlete feels comfortable, you could, and what we're trying to do again is work on making sure he's trying to extend this. If he can't because of pain or swelling or anything like that, that's fine. Maybe face them. And making sure there's no dipping. So this hip, we want to try to get it a little bit higher than the other hip, and we're just holding for those positions just to remind the body, remind the CNS what it's actually supposed to do. And then you can also then do, once that pain starts to calm down, just stationary marching. Nice and easy. Boring, but if we can just start to get the athlete comfortable just moving again and being like, oh, I'm actually doing stuff, I'm not just sitting on my couch for 6 weeks. Then once they can do that, we would progress to our gait retraining over the mini hurdles. Again, this can be done with crutches or just marching through like Matt's going to do. Stop, Matt. Go back. The key, and we really over-exaggerate it, so stand where you were, is we want to get the heel coming up first, so knee flexion first, then hip flexion, and then extend and try to get the heel first and get that roll through again. So you're trying to improve the stance strength as you're going through. Again, you can do it with crutches. If the athlete can only get the foot this high because of a brace or just swelling, that's fine, and then just come through. And it's just over time, we're just trying to progress to improve those range of motions, the confidence. Any questions on that one? That makes sense. This would be a great one that you can just do in the clinic all the time, right? Yeah, you guys would probably do this more than we would with our athletes. Again, it can be a toe injury. It can be, like I did it after my meniscus cleanup, and I only needed it for 2 sessions before I moved on. So you can have it in as long or as little as possible. From there, where are we? So yeah, once the athlete has better, especially knee flexion, and can actually land heel first, you would just go into just normal A marches going forward. And you wouldn't exaggerate it as much. It'd be kind of the foot coming up and the hip flexing at the same time. Rockers. There you go. And besides just the lower body, if Matt, you keep marching, a big thing for us with sprinting is the posture. So between the hip and the shoulder, there's going to be some movement, there's going to be some oscillations, but we want the athlete to be in control or at least aware of what's happening between those ball and socket joints. So those would be more just like normal gait retraining, max velocity. So max velocity, the upper body is a little bit more upright. If we're trying to improve acceleration, where would we go? Maybe just against that wall, Matt. So if you guys can't see, you might want to come around. Oh yeah, that works actually, that's perfect. We would do a wall drill where now we can lean the athlete in a little bit more. If we're rehabbing like a calf or an ankle, this is a really good one to get kind of some isometric strength into the beginning. So what we would do is just hold, so A-frame, just so we all remember, is this position. So we just hold an A-frame position in an inclined position. What big key for us is whatever this angle is from the shoulder to the heel, this shin should be the same angle. So a lot of athletes, especially if they don't have the hamstring strength, will cast out a little bit. And when they're sprinting, push the foot straight down, is they'll land in front of the hips, which is going to create a braking force against them. So again, even in phase 1, we're starting to ingrain good mechanics. So if you get that foot back here, we want to start practicing driving that foot back underneath or behind the hip. So again, you're just doing isometric. If it's a knee injury, really trying to extend and keep that knee straight. Then you can go into just marches. And this is a good one to really practice keeping that shin angle. So again, even a few days after surgery, maybe a couple weeks after surgery, this is a great drill just to start building up that leg strength again in a low risk kind of way. Big thing for us, we don't really need to go through it today, but this is where we'd be doing a lot of different isometrics for the calf or the knee. So different kind of wall sits, different hamstring bridges, glute bridges, adductor holds, calf raises, things like that, just to make sure that they're starting to build some of that strength back. And really, we wouldn't be doing any plyometrics in this phase, at least not true explosive plyometrics. One that we could do is, do you remember the drop squat? So tall to short without jumping down. On your toes though. So hands on hips. So this would be probably the first plyometric movement we would do with lower body rehab, is a drop squat. So he just controls down into that position and then stands up. So it's just starting to develop eccentric strength, reminding the body how to actually bend the knee, bend the hip, bend the ankle, and then you can start to coach side to side, see what kind of competencies there are. So this would be a good one you guys can do in the clinic more than we probably would program it. But yeah, that would be the first kind of plyometric tool we would use, even though it's not a true plyometric. Any questions about those kind of drills in that kind of stage one? That makes sense. The nice thing though, I know we're doing a case study with Matt as an ACL. Really, it's pretty much the same with any kind of lower body injury. You just might tweak them a little bit, or maybe there's a drill you can't do for whatever reason. So then phase 2, and this is where we would really collaborate back and forth together. This is where we start to get a little bit more load onto the system. This is where we're doing more marches, skips, low amplitude movements. So we want to start actually stressing those injured areas, improve hypertrophy, really start to improve gait mechanics rather than just isometric holds. And this is where we'll start to do more force absorption drills, so more plyometric type movements. And basically just establish that tolerance to loading. So our exit criteria from phase 2 to phase 3 would be our capacity test. So can they do 20 to 25 single leg calf raises? Can they do glute bridges, hamstring holds, single leg box squats, things like that, within like a 1 to 2 rep ratio or something like that. So now if you want to go back to the range of motion restored somewhat, pain and effusion down, like they shouldn't be swelling up session to session. Pain should be somewhat controlled, and then like ideally a physio, you guys telling us, okay, they're ready to start trying that a little bit. So some of the drills that we would really focus on, Matt, if you go back to the wall draw. So now to start stressing the tissues a bit more, so get into the A-frame hold, it's the load to lift, Matt. So then we just load the leg back, squat down so the heel will be on the ground, and then he'll drive the knee through and extend. So now we're starting to work that thigh coordination. As he extends off that left leg, we want to see that right thigh coming through at the same time. And now this is a really good one for any kind of calf or ankle injury, getting them to actually start to push off of that. Load and lift, the exchange. Yeah, we'll add that. We can combine a lot of drills. So load and lift up, pause, extend or exchange, and then do it on the opposite side. So now we're starting to get more ground reaction forces. Now the timing and the coordination, the posture is even harder for the athlete to maintain. So even without actually running for any kind of distance, we can start to mimic some ground reaction forces and things like that, work on the posture as well. Yeah, and especially when you get into the weeds of like hardcore sprint training mechanics, it's like if you don't know what you're looking at, you're like, oh, just do it. Or if you're trained at it, you're like, oh, there's 50 things we can improve. And then that's going to impact our weight training and other drills we'll do and stuff like that. So this is where we'll start to introduce some of, like what I said, that reactivity or the stiffness in the lower leg. So easiest one to start with would be, I have the order kind of mixed up, would be penguin walks. Yeah. So this is a great one for any kind of lower body injury, keeping the heels as high as we can and pulling the toes up. And for really strong athletes, you can load them up with like 50-pound dumbbells doing this, and it's like super hard. It looks silly. Most athletes, especially macho athletes, don't want to do it until you add some weight, and then they're like, oh crap, this is pretty tough. Even like a lot of drills to just add more challenge, postural challenge, you can hold a stick or a med ball overhead or out in front of you. So again, just to challenge it up. So if they're not quite ready to make the jump to the next progression or the next stage, you can just make those drills harder as well. Other drills that you can do if it's more lower body, I know we're talking about ACL, but heel walks. Like that, try not to kick the bum back too much. You can do on the side of the foot, inside of the foot, and then a rolling toe. So again, getting that heel strike. You need to have good knee extension to be able to do this one properly. So those are ways that we can start to condition the calf, get them ready for more low intensity plyometrics. So we'll do an assisted Pogo Hop. So anything, the athlete, you just tell the athlete, take as much weight as you want off when you're comfortable, and just do some Pogo Hops. So what we're looking for in terms of technique, that's good, Matt, is, so just hold that position again. We like a fairly flat foot contact. That doesn't mean heel strike, but we don't want really toey, because we don't want to see that. We want to see the toes actually dorsiflex up. And I like to tell my athletes, so the big toe joint, try to land just behind it. Or if you just set up, Matt, lift your heels up high enough that you could slide a credit card underneath, and then try to keep that position when you land, because that's going to get a little bit more tendon involved rather than just the muscles in the calves. From there, you just do Pogo Hops, hands on hips on the spot, stationary. And then from there, we do a lot of different Pogo Hop progressions. So it would just be forward. Again, trying to keep the heel not hitting the ground, but just off, backwards. This is good to start to condition the front of the shin a little bit more. If the athlete does have a lot of knee pain, you can allow them to bend a little bit more, but we try to have as minimal knee bend as we can, not locked out, obviously. And then obviously the single leg versions are going to be much harder. We like to see athletes be able to do single leg pogos without too much pain or biomechanical issues before we start to run. Not that they need to be perfect, but we're just a little bit more sure that they can handle those ground reaction forces a little bit better. Did you guys want to try any of these Pogo Hops or single leg Pogo Hops just to see what they actually feel like, Jenna? I taught him everything he knows. But you can see, like, after an injury, a lot of athletes that we get are athletes that haven't trained with us prior to injury are kind of like that. They're kind of slapping the ground. They're spending a lot of time to actually muscle up rather than using their tendons. So then if they don't have that ability and we just get them to start running right away, that's going to be, forces are going to be somewhere other than where we want it to be. So that's why we try to integrate that as early as possible. If you guys want to keep standing, because you can probably demo or practice some of this stuff, this is when we start to do more of our marching and skipping drills, so actually covering some ground. So Matt, if you want to go there, just start with so A march again, going, yeah, you can come this way. So things we're looking for is being nice and tall on that stance leg, getting the thigh somewhere around 90, a little bit higher if the athlete wants to. Just hold there, Matt. Something important, just seeing you guys there, so if there's a line coming down from the knee, we actually want the toe just behind there. So we're not butt kicking, but we want to be about here with the toe actually up, so we want to be flat, because again, like the Pogo Hop, this is where I want the foot to strike underneath the hip. There, we don't want to heel strike and we don't want to be too toey, because if we hit toey, it's going to spend time for the heel to come down, and now that's just increasing the time on the ground. Come back up now. So yeah, you want to think the toe somewhere around where that knee is. Because again, if we're teaching the athlete to be out here, that's going to cause them to overstride, be less efficient. That's actually a big risk factor for recurrent hamstring injuries, is overstriding and too much eccentric load. So we start with the marching drill. So Matt, you can just march again to start telling our athletes about those kind of things. With the hands, what we want to think about, if your hand's an axe and there's a chunk of wood on your hip, you're chopping past your hip. So you want to see a bit of daylight. A lot of athletes will just be here. But when we're sprinting, you need to have more of a range of motion in your shoulders so your legs can actually get a bigger range of motion as well. Makes sense? So then, do you guys actually want to try that going forward? Let's try that. You don't need to pause too much at the top, just kind of nice marching. Core stability, Jenna. So think of chopping past the hip. Don't just let your hand drop. Keep a little bend in your elbow and chop past. More space past your hip. You can add that. Yep, yep. That would just be a progression. If an athlete's really struggling, we'll just keep them flat-footed. But yeah, you can add that especially. Yep, yep, for sure. They're not wearing the right pants. They're not. So then the next progression after that is we want to get more frequency and more short contact. So it would just be our skipping progressions. A lot of athletes can't skip. They can't get the coordination. So we just teach a lazy skip first. But if he comes back, what I would cue him there is exaggerate how high that knee is coming up without letting the foot come out. So more range of motion. So this is good for like hip flexor injuries or hamstring injuries. Because if the hamstrings pulled and we're rehabbing that, just getting them through that dynamic range of motion safely is good. So you guys want to skip this way. See how, pop a little more, jump a little more, jump a little more. There we go. Dave's in.
I couldn't tell by that lack of hip flexion. You're telling me I'm doing this.
So that we'll do it again, but what I want you guys to think about, Matt, if you come towards me, like I said, we want to think of the posture between the hips and the shoulders. So when you guys do the skip towards me, so they can see. So it's quite upright and no exaggerated movements. If you guys go again, just think about what your torso is doing. Good, pop off the ground, so not too much time on the ground. There we go. Awesome. So then, once the athlete knows how to skip, because again, like we have so many athletes have no idea how to skip, which is terrifying to us. The way we kind of progress it is we have 3 gears. So gears 1, 2, and 3. So it's just easy for us to remember, and it's easy for us to explain to the athlete. Gear 1, and you guys can just do it with me. Just pick up your left foot. Gear 1 is picking the foot up over the ankle. Gear 2 is picking it up over the mid shin or mid calf, and then gear 3 would be a full knee drive, trying to step over the opposite knee. So that's the cue I give athletes, because a lot of athletes, when they do high knee drills or skipping, they only get their foot this high, which again, we want to create thigh separation. So if there's a line here, I'm trying to step over that with my drills. So then I just say, okay, we're doing A skips, Matt, gear 1. And then he'll come back. So again, regulating how high the foot's going to come up is going to reduce or change the impact into the ground. So if we're just teaching someone and they have a little bit of pain around the knee, we don't want to come all the way up and just start hitting the ground really hard. So then gear 2. So you can see it's a little bit springier of a skip, so getting more of that stretch shortening cycle. But what I usually get athletes to do, Matt just forgot, is start on the spot till he gets the rhythm, and then I'll give a second cue to go forward. So go. So this is gear 3, so stepping over the opposite knee. Now go forward. So you can see how springy it is. He's trying to keep the upper body nice and still. Yes. So show like a typical A skip, the one where you exaggerate the knee drive. So this is typically how people will do the A skip, which is good for range of motion. We teach it this way, so Matt, show them the gear 3 again. So both feet will hit at the same time, so it's a bit more of a spring. That's just what we prefer and what we like. You can do either type of A skip. So if you guys want to start, so we'll do gear 1. If we remember gear 1, I'm just picking up the foot a little bit. When I say go, when I say go, you guys will start on the spot. Once I like everybody, we'll say go the second time, and then you'll go forward, try to keep that rhythm. Ready? So first go on the spot, second go forward. Ready? And go. We use our arms attached to our body. We're not moonwalking. And go forward. Think of popping. Pop, pop, pop. Good.
Luke, get in line.
So hopefully this starts to show you guys that just because you can get the capacity up, so like if an athlete can do this, doesn't necessarily mean their coordination is improved, and that's a lot of what we can help with. So, Luke, are you going in? Yeah. Gear 2. So now think of the middle of your calf, picking up there, and go. Nice. Helen, do you mind coming out here just to demo something for me? No, just something to show. It's nothing bad. It's just something we'll cue. If you want to go this way,
No.
you can just do that gear 2 skip just to the. Yeah, you can go forward. So just watch the lower half. So you guys see what that foot's doing? So it's coming up and to here, but it's staying there. So something that we'd want to focus on is, so I'll give you this cue, but this is a cue I'd give, is there's a line, plumb line all the way down the body. I don't want the foot to get past that line. So there's a wall there. So I'd even get the athlete against the wall and just doing marches here so they can't kick the wall. So it's forcing her now to actually add some hip flexion, not just knee flexion. So get it out even more, foot out. Let's use your arms though this next time. The arms will help the legs. Good, so you can see, obviously it will take work. I never expect to fix an athlete in just one set, but you can see that she's actually starting to get out in front a little bit more. All right, now gear 3. So stepping over the opposite knee. So start on the spot. Pop, pop. Make sure the toes are up. So if you have laser pointers on your toe, they're forward, not down. Now go. There we go. Athletes. So this would be, so once an athlete can kind of do those drills, they can do Pogo Hops, single leg Pogo Hops. We're probably at the stage that we would start doing some tempo running and things like that. So starting to get out of stage 2 into stage 3. Oh, these will be fun. So then how we would progress that, Matt, do you want to do the A runs? So you got a demo for them. Nope, put the phone down so you can do it properly. So looking up, so on the spot. Yep, go. Quicker though. So this is where we start to build frequency. Quicker steps, quicker steps, quicker steps, quicker steps. Now go forward. So again, gear 1. So now we're just getting closer to what the ground contact time will be when we're actually running. And then gear 2. We'll start to get a little bit of cycle the foot. So just stop for a sec, Matt, sorry. We're not just picking up now. Now this is when we want to start getting a little bit of the heel coming up first, but then we want to step. I like to call it step over. So if this is the point that I'm picking my foot up to, I'm stepping over that point. Does that make sense? So then if it's my knee and I'm doing the A runs at gear 3, I'm trying to step over my knee rather than just picking my knees up, right? So gear 3, Matt, step over your knees when you do it. So you can see how it's coming forward, but it's still striking underneath his hip. All right? Now, we'll get you guys to do it. Gear 1, start on the spot first. Try to land on that middle part of the foot. That's too high, Jenna. Just over the ankles, just over the ankles. Now go forward. Nice. So, didn't tell you what to do. Oh. Cut. The hands are a good giveaway too. So if gear 1, I'm just stepping over my ankle, the hands will be kind of somewhere around my belt line. Gear 2, if I'm getting up here, will be just under the chest. And then gear 3, I'm going to be very close to where my shoulder is. So if I think fingertips, like somewhere between top of the chest to kind of chin level, somewhere around there, but I still want to chop down by the hip. All right. So if we're going to gear 2, make sure your hands are down here or too big, somewhere in the middle, nice and comfortable. And go. And go. Step over the calf, step over the calf. There we go. And now gear 3. Huffing and puffing now. And go on the spot, step up to your knee, and now go forward, short steps forward, step over the knee, feel the foot come around the knee. There you go. Not bad, not bad. So once the athlete can do that, what I'd probably do, actually, so if you guys want to stand over here, Matt, you can go to the door, Snowball Run. So this would be kind of a test to see how the athlete's handling the impact of running, but in kind of a safe, controlled way, and Dave will just get you outside. So Snowball Run, you start on the spot in either gear 1 or 2, start coming forward, whatever the distance is, usually around like 20 to 40 meters, you just slowly start to build the height up to the gear 3, and then slowly start to increase your stride length till it just turns into a normal run for like the last couple minutes. So if you guys want to like see how Matt starts, and you'll see as he progresses, it just snowballs into more and more of a natural run. So whenever you're ready, Matt, start picking up higher, higher, higher. Now longer, longer. Just like that. Ideally, we'd have more space to decel. So in the clinic, we probably wouldn't really be doing those. But if you guys want to go down there and just try it out, feel how weird of a progression it is to go from just high knees to actually running. Jenna, perfect. Thanks. So your steps will start super short, and then each one will just get a little bit bigger, a little bit longer. Start growing, start going, start going. Nice. And the nice thing is, if at any point, say her knee started hurting or the calf tweaked a little bit, she's not really running very fast, she can slow down right away. But if I said, go sprint 100 meters and it tweaks, she's back in the rehab room, right? Anyone else want to try that, or are we too tired now? Triple exchange. You guys have to do this one. No, walking forward, like going forward. So maybe start in the corner, come towards me. So this is just starting to add, this is where we would probably start taking over more of the programming. This is probably where they're starting to see you guys less and less, but where we start to add more kind of complexity and coordination to the whole drill. So this is just called a triple exchange. So start in your A position, hands up, and then you do 3 exchanges going forward each step, and we start with sticking it. So you'll see what I mean by stick. You'll pause for a second, so do 3. Hold, so it's fine to bounce around, refix where that toe is, Matt, pull it back a little bit, there. Now go again. So this is really good, so you can relax, Matt, we'll get you guys to try it. This is really good for teaching strength in the stance leg, because what a lot of athletes will do is they'll be down here, so their hips drop, where you got to be pushed nice and high. Try to keep the hips as high as you can as you're going through that drill. All right. So let's just get 3 of you going at a time. So the 3 that aren't going can see what the hips are doing. What's the stance leg look like when they pause, when they stick? So you do 3 exchanges going forward each step. The thighs should be hitting parallel every step as well. There you go. So you can see how they start good, and then it's, right? And now your guys go. Now you can critique them and make fun of them. So start nice and high, so thigh parallel, and then big jumps. Step over the knee. Nice. And then the next progression, Matt, you would do is with the bounce in between. Start there and then just come towards me. So rather than a stick, now you're just going to add little hops in between. So do it again, Matt. A few more hops in between. The important part now with this drill, again, is the stance leg, but the leg that's up, so the free leg, as he's hopping forward, he doesn't want it to drop down at all. That's the really hard part about this drill. So he'll do it again. Watch what the free leg does, the leg that's up. So it stays up. He's working really hard at that hip flexor to keep it up. All right, let's get 3 of you to try that one just to, again, feel the difference. This isn't something you'd probably be giving your athletes.
Oh, yeah, I thought you were all hopping.
Whenever you're ready. Hop forward on it, hop, 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 hop. So no pausing at all. Oh. Sobriety test, I think. Sobriety test. Little hops, little bounces, little bounces. Nice. Coordination, eh? Awesome. Scissor runs. Again, a lot of these you guys wouldn't be teaching in the clinic, but it's good for you guys to see what we would be adding for an athlete. So this one really works getting the hamstrings and the glutes, whacking that leg back down into the ground to produce some power. So again, this is a really good one post-hamstring injury. I guess if it was a hamstring graft, this is a drill that we'd probably want an athlete being competent at before they're cleared for full sprinting. So because we don't have the room, he can't really get the leg up and really whack down, or else he'd run into this right away. But you can just start like he was doing with mini scissor runs, maybe a bit more frequency, not as high. So minimal knee bend, but you can see he's still trying to hit the same part of the foot that we've been kind of coaching this whole time. So if you guys want to try that one. Nice. So a typical thing we see that all you guys did, which is great, is because we want the glute and the thigh extending now. That's where we're going to get a lot of power. So with this drill, we want to really see that they're pushing once they hit the ground. So they're pushing through that motion. Where you guys were kind of all in front doing this. Let's do it again, but try to actually like push and feel the leg and the thigh push behind you. So you'll actually cover a little bit more ground on every step. If that makes sense. Push, push, push. Oh, geez. We'll scrap that one. All right, so then with those drills, probably around the same time, that's where we'd be introducing on the plyometric side more concentric and integrated base plyometrics. So concentric would just be like a box jump, so there's minimal eccentric loading. Or integrated is just where you're combining the eccentric and the concentric, so a hurdle hop or a broad jump. Single leg jumping is where we start to introduce this, because again, if they can single leg hop and stick, they're probably ready for running. And then this is where we'd start to introduce our tempo running, so anywhere from 30 to 50 meters to start, up to kind of 100 meters, maybe 200 meters for like a soccer player or someone with more cardiovascular requirements. Anywhere between 500 and 1,200 meters volume to start, and then like we said, add 10% per week. We prefer that way, the tempo run way, rather than just doing distance running for extended time, whether it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, because when you do tempo running, you're actually running at a higher speed, so you're using better sprint mechanics anyways. And athletes like me that don't like distance running, I can get my head wrapped around, okay, I run 50 meters, walk 50 meters across the field, and then run back. I can actually do that rather than 5K run or something like that. So a lot of male athletes like doing tempo running better than distance running. And then once they're kind of doing 1 to 2 kilometers of tempo running, we then progress them to stage 4, which is now we're doing more sprinting and the high amplitude kind of stuff. And really at this stage, they kind of just be checking in with you guys. And we might still be emailing back and forth, but we'd really be dominating that program at this stage. But just a few other things that we can do is just the types of starts we would do. So we have 2 different types of starts that we program, either a soft start or hard start. A hard start is going to be more muscular force, a little bit more aggressive on the body. So if we're rehabbing an injury, we wouldn't start with a hard start. So a hard start, Matt, if you just want to show like a 2-point start. So loaded, he's static, and then he explodes out as hard as he can. That might not be comfortable for a lot of lower body rehabs. So what we do instead is a soft start. Maybe just still go there, Matt, just to, the falling start. So very similar position. So he's going to be in 2-point start, 2-point stance. So front foot's flat, back heel's elevated. Hands are kind of in front of the body. Bend over a little bit more. So I don't really care about posture. He can be flopped over, and he's just going to roll forward. And once he's about to fall on his face, that's when he's going to accelerate out. So it's not that really hard concentric. So that's a soft start, falling start. Other ways, what are those cones? Cones. Other ways that we can do it, just to limit kind of the force. Actually, Matt, if you want to come down here, we can get all you guys to kind of try it. Are either walk-in starts or jog-in starts. And these aren't just for rehab. I use these all the time with my athletes, especially early off-season, just to save the body a little bit if they've been sitting around all winter. So if you want to start there, Matt. So a walk-in start, just like that. You just walk to the first cone. Once you hit that cone, you accelerate through the last one. So it just takes a little bit of the heat off. It is hilarious just to tell someone walk from here to here, how they change, how they walk. They start to walk really funny. So if you guys want to just practice that just to see what it kind of feels like. Walk and run. Let's go on this side so we don't hit the mirror. So Jenna, full speed when you hit that cone. Oh my gosh, where's the mechanics we just worked on? And you guys can run, like, once you pass that cone, yeah. There we go, thank you. Competition. Excellent, thank you. And then we'll come back, and then the jog-in start is the same thing, but you're jogging, so a little bit more speed, so you can hit higher speeds by the end. We'll just watch Matt do it full speed.
Full speed.
He's warm by now. Nice. So then a way that we would kind of monitor the intensity of that sprint, so say in the program, I want my athlete to run 30-meter reps. Obviously, if we're just rehabbing a 30-meter sprint is quite stressful, could lead to some injury, is we would cap it. So Matt, if you just come over here, just for an example. So we'll say this is 15 meters. What I would tell Matt, so he's in a 2-point start, so we're doing a hard start, is accelerate as hard as you can to the first cone, and then whatever speed you're at by that cone, you maintain that for the rest of the distance. So then he kind of eases off. He's not slowing down. He's trying to maintain it. So then every week, so if this was a 5-meter acceleration and then he's capped at that speed for 20 meters, then maybe the next week is, okay, accelerate as hard as you can till 10 meters. So the overall distance is the same, but each week we're just slowly stretching that out. So then by the end of that, he's doing 30 meters absolutely flat out. there's not much more he needs to progress by that point to be fully ready to go back to sport. Maybe there's some change of direction stuff and fitness stuff you would need to keep progressing, but in terms of high speed linear running, that's pretty much, we would sign that off as he's fully ready to go, normal athlete again. So, but the nice thing is we don't, it's not like a clear, okay, you're a phase 1 athlete, you're a phase 2 athlete. It kind of just morphs with some clear guidelines, exit criteria, to, by the time they're at this stage, they've pretty much been doing a full program for a couple weeks by that point, rather than just saying, oh, you can run, now you're checked off, now you can go back to normal training with Nick and Matt again. So, any questions about that? Is that enjoyable? Thanks.